Okay, we are recording. Mike, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's actually quite nice outside today. I feel like I've been living the exact same day with just like grey skies for the past 3 weeks, so it's nice to see a bit of sunlight.
Where's that sunlight coming from? Where are you?
I'm in my bedroom right now in Polton-le-Filed.
In where?
Polton-le-Filed, it sounds like a completely made up town, but it's just a town just outside of Blackpool.
Oh, nice, nice. Well, look, let's kick off the playlist, and we always do that by me asking the guests to tell me the song that they regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
Um, cool, yeah. The one that came to mind straight away was Shine On You Crazy Diamond on the Wish You Were Here album by Pink Floyd. I remember kind of discovering that. My dad showed me that record. He said it's one of his favorite records of all time. And I found it when I was in college, and I used to listen to it every single evening, just in bed, just before I go to sleep, and it just put me in such a relaxed mood. And I think that intro is just so it goes on for such a long time, but it never gets boring. Like they always add something new every so often, and all the guitar solos are so catchy and imaginative. Like you can literally sing the guitar solos.
Yeah,
It's just so incredible, and it really kind of like sets the tone for the record. That really kind of like beautiful but melancholic kind of tone. That kind of feeling of that you're kind of lost, and I feel like you kind of get lost amongst all of the music, like all of the synths and all of the textures that they have in the song. So that's probably one of my favorite intros to not just a song, but I think the whole album.
yeah, yeah. I think Pink Floyd are the masters of all of them things that you've just described. I think they're top of the tree when it comes to that. Um, I'm always interested to know because showing you Crazy Diamonds a prime example of it's always sort of two ways when guests answer this question. It's either someone will go straight in with "Oh, Help" by the Beatles, like bang, straight in, like, and then the other 50% of guests will go for something far more kind of sort of soundscapey and gradual. And I'm interested to know, like, when you're making music, um, what considerations go into the intro? And I asked that framed around the fact that when Floyd made that record, the way that people got their music was completely different to how they get their music now. I'm sure Gilmore and Waters weren't thinking, well, this might blow up on TikTok. Whereas in the weird world we live in now, things like TikTok and obviously the streaming services are all key places where people consume their music now. Um, and I think what these streaming platforms and such do is offer us everything, within a heartbeat, which is amazing to be that spoiled for music.
hmm
But I think it, coupled with what appears to be shortening attention spans of generations coming through, that it does feel, certainly maybe with more sort of commercial pop music, that there is that desire to don't bore us, get us to the chorus, and that mentality of like grab them because there's so much new music out there. We've got to grab them, and I just wonder with all of them sort of things, does any of that filter through? I'm spending a lot of time trying to get this question right, but I hope you know where I'm going with it. Does
I
any
know
of it sort of
exactly.
filter
Yeah.
through into your creative process, if at all?
Um, I think there's certain things that I will keep in mind um when writing a song um because I think sometimes as well, like, I mean, we've always written music for us. Like that's we're kind of like the main audience for our band. We just want to write stuff that we want to selfishly want to listen to. We want to write those records where we feel like um we're not being provided with that kind of music in this current climate. So we
Yeah,
want to be we're really fortunate to have this platform to be able to actually write and record that music to the best of our ability. Um, but it's quite easy to get caught up into a lot of that, especially when you are when you become a little bit more desperate as an artist, when you're maybe not doing, maybe you don't think you're doing as well as you think you are, and you think like, I wonder if there's like a shortcut or something like that. And it can be quite easy to get kind of like sucked into that. A lot of people kind of want like an instant success these days, but for us, it's always been like a slow and steady grind. And maybe that's by our own hand as well, because we've always just wanted to do what we want to do. Um, but also I think so I'm not really on TikTok. I don't particularly like it. I'm not a huge fan of social media in general, although it is a double-edged sword, and it's been amazing for us to reach new people in a way that bands couldn't do that
Yeah,
15 years ago. But I do feel like there is a very short lifespan for artists that get noticed that way. And like you said, so because everyone seems to have quite a short attention span and you're constantly being bombarded with music, there's no time to actually really listen to it and realize just how precious that music is. And sometimes the music to me seems so calculated and so formulaic because it's been designed for that purpose. I simply can't enjoy it because it just seems cold, and it feels like it's been kind of like developed and designed by a computer and by an algorithm. I know it sounds so bleak and so morose to say that, but when I listen to it, I don't feel that heart and soul that went um, into the track that I've just heard. And we've always really strived to write and record music that we feel will hopefully stand the test of time. And hopefully people will discover in the future, and it won't sound tacky, or it won't sound like, well, that was very of its moment. We want our music to be enjoyed, across um at any point in time. Hopefully, we try our best with that. We also do want to sound quite modern as well, and we're always fighting to push the needle forward with our music as well. We don't want to sound like the music came from the past. We want to we want to say like, this is how we hear rock music, and this is what we think the future of rock music can be. It can be loud guitars with amps and pedals and stuff like that. It can still be that, but it depends on how you present it as well.
absolutely. I couldn't agree more with what you said there. I think if you go chasing that kind of what is current and right now, and what's trending on the algorithms and such, then it's not gonna it's not gonna age well. I think if
Mm.
you stick to, I've often sort of said it's the difference between fashion and style. Fashion will come and go, and will always, you look at it and you'll go, fucking hell, I can't believe I wore that. That was definitely 1992. And like, but you put a pair of Levi's on, and it's like, could wear them anytime.
Timeless.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's why we're talking about Pink Floyd, however many decades later,
Yeah.
because it wasn't fashionable. It was just,
And
stylish.
and the best thing about a good pair of Levi's is the longer you wear them, the more comfortable they get.
Damn right. And they look better.
Yeah. I
I'm
love
going to
that.
ask you for track two, Mike, to tell me the first song you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please, mate.
So the first track that really I've always really liked quite sad music. I don't know, that's just like what sets my brain on fire when I hear it. I love it so much. And that song for me was I was very young, and I heard it on Stars in Their Eyes, is it? The one where you get to they bring people on and they dress them up like the person. Is that what that's called?
That's
I
the
can't even
one. Yeah,
remember. Yeah, and I heard Don't Speak by No Doubt. Um and it just I think it's just all of it, like the chord progressions, just like the overall vibe and mood of the song, um and Gwen Stefani's voice. It just is I think like such a genuinely quite a sad song that I heard, that and I immediately knew that I kind of became obsessed with it, and I immediately knew that I that's the kind of thing that I liked. And yeah, even though the performance, I think they mime as well. I don't think they actually sing on that
Yeah.
show, do they? So it was the proper vocal and everything. But I just remember it just with absolute wonder, just going like, what is this? And yeah, I went out and bought the single as well, back when you could buy singles. And yeah, that was the first song that really kind of resonated with me and kind of gave me like an emotional response, like a direct emotional response to it.
What would that emotion have been if you had to pinpoint it?
Oh man. We've got like a bit of an obsession with that Portuguese word saudade. We named one of our EPs after that kind of that word because it's that exact word is kind of how I felt. And the word is a Portuguese word that can't be directly translated into English. And it's you can explain it in a way. I feel like you still can't really get close to it just by using words, but like, yeah, it's like a feeling. It's that melancholic feeling and that longing and that kind of like deep sadness that's not a bad kind of sadness. It's almost like a longing for something that you like sometimes you've never even experienced as well, which is it's just such a beautiful thing. But it really just kind of puts me in a place. And yeah, I think that's the kind of thing that I felt from hearing that song. It kind of put me somewhere else.
I've
Um, yeah.
asked that question 570 times now, Mike, and I don't think anyone's answered that better. Uh, you pulled a word and an emotion from another language and explained it beautifully. Yeah, I think you've won today.
Oh
That's
well, thank you. I'm just being honest.
love it, love it.
But yeah, it's such a beautiful word, and a lot of their culture actually revolves around that word. Like it's amazing. It's spawned like artists and poetry and music, and it was just such a wonderful thing to come across. And it was all just because we were trying to find a name for our EP. That was a pop punk EP as well, you know. Um, but we were looking for that word, and I remember Googling all of these words, and it kept coming back to that. And I just thought it was such a beautiful way of kind of like naming the record. And I kind of took that forward. I was just like, that's the word for that feeling that I've been experiencing almost my whole life, and it's wonderful.
Love it. You mentioned that your dad introduced you to Floyd and that track. Tell me a little bit about where home was and how musical was home growing up.
Oh, well, how long have you got? My dad, my dad was in the RAF, so um, my dad was in the RAF, and my mom is from Malta. She moved over here with my dad was basically stationed out of there. They met out in Malta, and then she moved over here when she was 19. So we've always been back and forth to Malta. So that's always felt like a second home because my family are there. But then I lived in Sardinia for 3 years on the beach as well, which was absolutely amazing. I grew up mostly in Paris, um, and all the while I feel like I've been exposed to different types of music in these kind of different types of settings. My parents like music like enough, I think. My mom introduced me to the Michael Jackson album Dangerous, which is still one of my favorite records
Yeah,
today. That kind of I don't think that album sounds like any other Michael Jackson record. You know, it's kind of like a brand new kind of like it almost kind of like I think it came out in 1991. I might be wrong, but it
that's about right.
almost kind of just dictated like what pop music could be and what it should be, you know. And it's like quite a hard record as well. Like I love the way that the synths are. I love how upfront and in your face everything is. I love the emotion behind it, behind quite a lot of the tracks. But yeah, and then when I lived in Paris, I was really fortunate enough to so I went to an international school and a lot of my friends were American, Canadian. And they kind of put me on the fast track to like um what was kind of popping at the time, which was like a lot of new metal stuff. So I kind of like found out about stuff like Limp Bizkit, Korn, and Deftones like really quickly, and kind of like before those bands broke. So that really informed like a lot of the heavier stuff that I like and listen to. And I still listen to it to this day. Like Deftones, one of my favorite bands of all time since I was 14. I remember when White Pony came out and it blew my mind. And yeah, like a lot of that stuff that so basically when we started writing this album, I was just like, I want to do, I want to include a lot of stuff that got me really excited when I was a teenager when I discovered it for the first time. You know, you can't really, I feel like that level of excitement, especially when you're young and you've never heard that kind of stuff before, that level of excitement was what I wanted to bring to the table for Sundiver. So yeah, luckily I was really fortunate to kind of experience all of these different settings and scenarios and locations and actually grow up in them. And it really kind of defined me quite a lot on a musical kind of level for sure.
Absolutely. And to kind of sort of have that kind of influence of like we'll talk Deftones more a little later, um, but but then to have that balanced out with the kind of sort of pop sensibilities of Michael Jackson, and you say about Dangerous, being that sort of statement to set the bar for pop music and go, I think he'd already done that as well with the previous records as well of their time. He was like, look, this is pop music, by the way. This
Yeah.
is how you do it, and and I think a little while later, ages ago, I spoke to I can't remember who it was on here, one of the shows, and they were messing around with this sort of technology and frequencies that Michael Jackson done on one of his last records, where he'd found this kind of, you may know all about this sort of formula and this frequency that brings on goosebumps. And it's
Yeah.
like, you heard about this? It's
I
like,
I know a little bit about it, but
because not
I
everyone
also
gets goosebumps, right? Apparently.
not everyone apparently.
Yeah.
Not everyone experiences that feeling of like goosebumps or your hair standing up when they
Yeah.
listen to music.
That's sad, isn't it?
That's yeah, that's like an auditory processing thing. Um, someone told me that the other day, so I don't know. You just don't know. Some people might have read something on the internet and taken it as gospel, but yeah, I've heard that not everyone's brains are wired that way, where they can experience that, which makes me a little bit sad because I think that's one of the best feelings in the
Oh
world.
man,
Yeah.
it's the best. It
But
really is the best.
maybe they're just not listening. Maybe those people are just not listening to the right music for them.
Oh, they're dead inside.
Either way, yeah. So how did he come up with, I'm guessing it was probably between him and his producer, Quincy,
Like
right, that have found an actual, because his music does
something.
gives me goosebumps like
Yeah,
every time.
yeah. Um, yeah, I don't know. I don't know the sort of science behind it, but that was the technology that he was messing with, that his music, would create something that would give you goosebumps, however, well, I mean, I don't know. It sounds crazy, but there was a lot of crazy around Michael Jackson, and
Yeah. Oh
and
yeah.
it just fans the flames of interest about someone, and you know we lost Quincy Jones a couple of weeks ago, and I think you put Quincy Jones in a room with Michael Jackson, and what you got was arguably the greatest pop music that ever has ever been made. But
Yeah.
um, but I want to talk about Deftones shortly, because that's a band that give me goosebumps. I'm going to ask you now, please, Mike, to tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school, please.
Let's have a look. Um, it's Back to School by Deftones. I feel like it's got the most kind of fitting name as well, but when I guess like when that song came out, it was constantly on like Kerrang and MTV2. And I feel like the video for that song just kind of reminded me of my actual high school as well. Um, and it's just got, I think it just feels like Deftones for me anyway. I feel like Deftones kind of filled a place where from where Nirvana left off. You know, I feel like obviously like Nirvana had this really cool grungy feel to it all, and it lasted all the way through the 90s. And I feel like Deftones almost like picked up on that and then did it in a more modern and in like this is the new modern day. And I feel like that song just sounds so grungy to me. Like the vocal is so cool. Um I know that they hate that song as well because they were kind of forced, kind of gun to their head. They were kind of forced into making it because they didn't have a quote unquote single on White Pony, which is absolutely ludicrous because that album is spotless in my
Facts.
opinion.
Yeah,
But that's the way record labels be apparently. Um, but yeah, it just it makes me happy. It makes me think of like a sunny day, and being back in school with my friends, and we all listen to that song and like a lot of that kind of music with our Discmans, and we'd share headphones and stuff, and I have a lot of fond memories. I actually had such a great high school experience. I still talk to a few of them. They're all kind of spread out now because they were international students.
yeah, yeah,
So I've not seen, I think I've only seen one of them in Canada when we toured Canada. And that was pretty surreal. It had been such a long time. But yeah, I still speak to a few of them online, and we've all changed a lot since then. But it's always nice to check in. But yeah, that's the song. I love that song.
yeah. It's spectacular, and I think you kind of drawing that kind of sort of correlation with the kind of emotional level and stuff that Nirvana was connecting with
Mm.
people sort of 10 years previously. Like it's really weird. Like of the stuff that was coming out with if you want to put Deftones under the new metal bracket, like the stuff that was coming out, and I've run a venue for 30 or so years, an alternative venue, and and we've long been playing Deftones and such, but I think of all the other bands that we were playing, whether that be Limp Bizkit, Papa Roach, all of them bands that come out at that time, for me, they felt a little fashionable, but Deftones felt stylish. And and
Yeah.
that's why for me, I think, taking nothing away from Limp Bizkit, probably one of the biggest bands on the planet at that point, but it feels to me they're now sort of going out on more of a nostalgia tour type thing, whereas people still can't wait for new Deftones music because it's fucking Deftones and they're spectacular. But for me, to get where I was going to go with this, and I'm sure we'll pull back to it on your last track, and I think you might even be wearing the t-shirt. Um, but for me, as a 51-year-old guy, when I first heard Deftones and their guitars, certainly White Pony, or like maybe even Quiet and Drive, like it was as much as I could hear that kind of the emotion that was in Nirvana and that. I'm like, man, this ain't a metal band. It's a fucking shoegaze band. And
Yeah.
and then when
Yeah.
I had Minerva, I'm like, this is fucking Ride. This is Ride. This is
Yeah.
fucking Slow Dive. This ain't metal. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. They were doing that like and they were quietly doing that as well because like it was probably really unfashionable at the time to even mention shoegaze. It was still kind of like, which is such a shame as well. I'm so glad that bands like Slowdive are finally getting their flowers now because they were so horribly shunned at the time. But yeah, like it's cool because with going back to the whole Deftones thing as well, like they never, in my eyes, they never fit in with, and I know that everyone got tired with the new metal brush, but they never fit in my opinion. And it was always something, it was that interesting and emotional side that they provided for me that I really loved. And they really did. the world building on the albums is so insane. Like you can put your headphones on and you can be transported somewhere else. I love how the music videos really tied together so perfectly with the music as well. Like
Yeah.
the video for Change in the House of Flies, like is I don't know if it's because I've seen that music video so many times, but like when I put on my headphones, that's what I see. And I wonder if I would still see that kind of vibe if I hadn't seen the music video as well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the shoegaze aspect is so, I think it's so cool to me. It's just like, because a lot of the guitars as well, like, that was another thing that I paid attention to for Sundiver was when people think shoegaze, they automatically think, well, I must drown everything in reverb. But bands like Deftones and My Bloody Valentine achieved that shoegaze sound with using minimal reverb, and a lot of stuff is quite dry, but it's just all down to the way that those guitars are played and the way that those guitar lines interact with each other. And that's kind of what I really wanted to focus on this record as well, was that guitar sound. I wanted it to be mostly dry, but I wanted to create these levels and textures that felt like one big guitar sound.
Yeah.
So I do take a lot of like influence from them, and the My Bloody Valentine record obviously is just, start to finish, it's just a vibe. So
I I was lucky to a few times now. I've spoke to Andy Bell from Ride and Mark Gardner, funnily enough, from Ride on this
that's
podcast.
amazing.
And and at the time when I was chatting to Andy, he was in BDI and he'd just come out of being in Oasis, and he said when he was touring with Oasis in America, he said it was almost embarrassing. He said because they'd be doing signings and people were literally walking past Liam and Noel going, dude, when are Ride getting back together? He said shoegaze was not cool in the UK then, but in America they were still loving it. And I was like, oh
Oh,
mate,
nice.
because it was so weird. It was like when I got the kind of nod that I was first going to have Andy Bell on, like I sort of said to my old Andy Bell from Oasis. I was like, no, man, from fucking Ride. I was like, they've got to do from riding. I'm not worried about Oasis, man. This is like, so yeah, and it's been amazing to see like Slowdive. I saw Slowdive and Ride support The Cure a few years ago, and they were both like coming back, with great records, and it was wonderful. And yeah, and also while we're talking Deftones, I was really lucky to have had Abe on here.
Oh,
Uh,
awesome.
and
Such a one of my favorite drummers of all time, for
and
real.
arguably the greatest sounding snare drum ever. Like, do you know what I mean?
Oh
Deftones knew a
man.
snare drum, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Man, you get it. I'm actually so glad to be talking to you today.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well,
I
look,
love that.
we've spoken about lots of cool records, so I don't know if this one's going to completely pull the rug from under us. I'm going to ask you to tell me the first record you remember buying from a record shop, please, mate.
Um, so I'm pretty sure it was well, are we talking records? Because I bought a few singles.
Yeah, it could be single. Yeah,
All right, because this one was I mean, I'm not really ashamed to be fair, but I bought the Limp Bizkit single for Take a Look Around. I think was the first thing that I bought.
yeah,
I was just kind of like, I still think it slaps, to be fair. It's not the best song in the world. Like I was listening to it the other day and I was like, man, it could go even harder, this song, but it kind of simmers a little bit.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, I like the way the guitars sound on it. I like Wes Borland's playing. I like how they actually turned that Mission Impossible theme into like kind of a cool and, well, for the time, a really cool rocking track.
yeah,
But the first actual record that I bought was Conspiracy of One by The Offspring.
yeah,
Um, that was kind of like the first record that I had in my hands that where I was able to like really flick through the book, listen to it on repeat. Um, and yeah, the Offspring were another really kind of like a big band for kind of defining like that I liked rock music. Just I saw them on Top of the Pops when they did Pretty Fly for a White Guy. I'd never experienced loud and just rowdy music like that before, and it just kind of like once again set my brain on fire. I was just
Yeah.
like, this is insane. The drummer had all these like little like severed doll's heads on
That's
spikes
sweet.
on it around his drum kit, and every time he hit one, it would do the "Give it to me, baby."
Yeah,
I just thought it was ridiculous and so cool. Um, so yeah, I got Conspiracy of One, and then later on, my dad just randomly bought me Americana, and it was proper random. He just came home from work one day and he was like, "Oh, I heard you like the Offspring. Here you go."
that's a cool
So
dad, man.
yeah, he's awesome. He's always been so supportive as well.
And I think, as a as a young lad, like to put MTV on and see those Limp Bizkit videos, them Offspring videos, and at that point, like the whole musical compass was pointing to this stuff that was happening in America that was completely popping in Technicolor, wasn't it? Marilyn Manson, whatever it was all so bright, and that whole American Pie thing was popping off. Blink were happening. It was like, you know, it
Yeah.
was exciting, was it? As a young person, you must have looked at that and just thought, that's so cool.
Yeah, it felt like it was one of those rose-tinted glasses moments where like I think because everything like I said was in Technicolor and so bright and in your face, like it seems like every day was a sunny day to me when I think back to that time.
Yeah, yeah,
Not to I will say though there are things from that era that I will gladly leave behind. You know, when you get a little bit older and you go like, man, that was really crap, or that kind of
yeah,
sucked. Like I listened to this movie podcast called We Hate Movies, and they just kind of like they're just four friends from New York that just rip into like bad movies. They love movies. They absolutely
yeah.
love them so much. But it's a comedy podcast. But they recently did the first two American Pies, and oh man, like they really they really hang it out to dry. They were so fun at the time, but like man, there's some like really bad messages in those films.
I uh, I actually went on a movie podcast called Films to Be Buried With, hosted by a comedian actor called Brett Goldstein, and it's it's a bit like this. It's actually on the same network as this podcast, but it's more framed around films.
Hmm.
And uh, and we was talking about them kind of teen movies, and I'm a lot older. I grew up watching teen movies like Police Academy and Porky's and all of these kind of frat type films. And
Yeah.
when American Pie happened, it was the first one of them in so long, and it was. And I remember when I first saw American Pie, I think it was one of the funniest things ever, and I thought it was just absolutely fantastic. And then I was chatting to him, he's like, "Yeah, they set up a spy cameraman and broadcast a girl masturbating to the whole school," and it's like, "Yeah, that's pretty fucking dark now, isn't it?" It's like
It's
that
so
shit ain't being made
dark.
anymore.
It's
Like,
so dark. Very of
um,
its time. Yeah.
yeah, and it's weird because it again, like I do another podcast that I co-host with one of the lads that's was in a show called The Inbetweeners, and I've spoke to him, and it's like that show's not being made the way it was now, because there's so much stuff in that show that hasn't aged well, like so much
Yeah.
terminology and stuff like that, and you just think, yeah, it's weird that maybe like because it's really weird because you mentioned Michael Jackson, and lots of people have chose Jackson on here, and lots of people have chose other artists that lots of people have that are older people have said that glam was their era, and they wanted to talk about Gary Glitter, and they were like, I can't talk about it now, and a lot of people have chosen Michael Jackson, and we should make it clear, obviously, he's never been found guilty of anything, but they
Hmm.
were quite uncomfortable saying that, they loved Michael Jackson. And I'm covered in Smith's tattoos, but Morrissey's saying some dumb shit. And it's like, where do you draw the line between artist and music? Do you know what I mean? It's like, can I listen to that and separate that from that? And, can I enjoy some of these films now that were of that time, and can I separate where it sits now? It's weird, isn't it? It's like,
Yeah.
and I think, if you start separating and breaking down everything. You're going to start going back to pieces of art from, from the 1500s that were, painted by some of the most horrific humans that have ever walked the planet. And it's like, where do you draw the line? Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's a weird
Yeah,
one. And so, yeah, it's always about some things don't age better than others. And it's, yeah, I've had to kind of make my weird peace with, not that I agree in any way, shape, or form with some of the rhetoric that's come out of Morris's mouth, but when I listen to the Smiths, I can still enjoy the Smiths and separate it
good.
from him. And the same with
Yeah,
Michael Jackson. Like if he done the things that he's been accused of, that's fucking horrific. But that's not been proved. And when I hear Michael Jackson records, I still enjoy listening to Michael Jackson records.
sure. And yeah, I obviously nothing was proven with Michael Jackson, but when I talk about Michael Jackson, I'm talking about the Michael Jackson on the record as well.
Absolutely, of
I think that's
course.
kind of where I can kind of draw the line because as well, so many of these people that everyone puts on pedestals are at the end of the day also just people and human beings. A lot of people that I'm not giving anyone ever like any excuses for doing terrible things at all, but I think I think there's always going to be something, whether it be big or small, something that they've done wrong in their lives or something. I don't want to get into it too much, but
Completely.
it's not for me to say, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is a very tricky thing to navigate as an artist. I
Yeah.
love that Michael Jackson album and I don't think anything's going to stop me from doing that.
Yeah.
It was a very important album to me. And it informed quite a lot of the way that I approach writing music.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm still kind of navigating that. I'm not quite sure where I stand on that.
I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. I really don't. I think it's
No,
you know, it's how you sort of make sense of these things yourself, and I don't for a moment think that anybody that's ever been on this podcast that has discussed any of them artists ever agrees with anything bad that they've done. But
yeah,
if you
yeah.
can separate that music from it and enjoy that music, then you know I don't see that as a bad thing. Right, let's go clubbing. Well, I'm going to ask you about the song that soundtrack your year's clubbing, and what have you gone for?
Did I pick one? I never really enjoyed going out that much, and yeah, I just put I don't go clubbing.
I'm going to let you into a secret, Mike. So I've done 573 episodes of this show, and I reckon 525 of the comedians, musicians, producers, actors that have been on here, I've all said the same.
Um, yeah, I mean, like obviously I've gone out and stuff. I don't think I've ever had like that song that kind of reminds me of that. Yeah, I'd be stuck for that one to be honest.
I should stress,
I never really enjoyed going out to those kind of environments. So
yeah, I
yeah,
guess I should sort of frame it a little bit better insofar as I don't mean, picture that night when you had your shirt off with glow sticks raving at like it's not really that. It's like, have you got a time in like a student union bar or a rock club or like, down a local sort of dive bar with your pals, a song that kind of, I guess, a song that really sort of soundtracked that kind of excitement of youth, that kind of, going out and meeting people and finding your tribe, that kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
yeah.
I'm putting you on the spot here. Sorry, mate.
Well, when I was at uni, the big thing at the time was like what is now called landfill indie.
Yeah. That's a
So
horrific term, isn't it?
it's so mean. It's so mean.
Those
But
poor pigeon detectives, man. They were thrown in there first as well.
so yeah, that was a lot of the stuff that was played at the on those nights out. It was like um to be quite honest, I'm not really a big fan of that kind of movement. Kind of praying, fingers crossed that it doesn't come back as well. Um but yeah, it was stuff like Arctic Monkeys, the first album. That's kind of like those songs would come on without fail every single night. Um, but yeah, no, I couldn't think of I can't think of one. Nothing comes to
Yeah,
mind for that.
that's cool. Well, look, we'll leave the club and we'll get your own mate. And so I'm going to ask you for this one to tell me a favourite track from an artist from your home county, please. I mean, what's your home county, man? You've been pretty nomadic, haven't you?
Oh, sorry, I misread that. I thought it said home country.
Know what I said about the 520 guests that never went clubbing? Them same 520 guests also went, oh, I thought it was country, not county. So you're not alone there either, mate. Don't worry.
We're
Everyone's,
all the same, aren't we?
you're all
Yeah.
the same.
I'm lucky enough to share the same town as Robert Smith from The Cure, birthplace Blackpool Victoria Hospital, which is really
Wow.
cool. Even though he didn't really live here, I think he was probably moved when he was like 2 or 3 or something like that. But
Hmm.
that's always like quite a cool thing. Um, but I don't think there's many. Rick Astley's from Lancashire.
I'll tell you what, Mike. Uh, I mean, I want to talk about how good the new Cure record is, but I've just finished Rick Astley's book, and
What?
I've just finished his book, right?
Yeah.
And it's one of the greatest things I've ever read.
Really? Oh,
I'm not even a
hell
Rick
yeah.
Astley fan. I'm not a Rick Astley fan. Um, but I slang it on when I was out having a walk as an audiobook. He seems like the nicest dude ever, and his life is insane. And the scenarios he's found himself in. If you want a good rock and roll read, Rick Astley,
I'm gonna do it right. I'm gonna make a note right now on that because I will forget it.
and he narrates it, and it's wonderful. It's really good. His whole life, uh, he's basically there's just this ongoing theme throughout the whole book that his whole life is a game of two halves, where for every sort of middle-aged housewife that used to go up to him and say, "Oh, you seem like a nice lad," it was always 50-50 with whilst that conversation was going on from some scaffolding someone would shout, "Ashley, you wanker." And it basically frames the whole story. It's fantastic. But I mean, we've just seen the Cure play a fantastic session for Radio 2. And I mean, we've talked about Deftones. I think, Deftones wouldn't be the Deftones if it weren't for the Cure as well. Are
Oh
you
yeah.
are you a big Cure fan?
Not massively, I will admit. It was one of those. I was always more of a Smiths fan
Mm,
than Cure. I think I just kind of I felt like I missed the boat a little bit, and all of a sudden there were too many albums, and I listened to the two main ones that I think are really good. Um, but I actually found The Cure through Blink-182 because they did a song with Robert Smith. That's kind of like
yeah,
how I started listening to them, which is so cool that they love that band and they introduced it to like a new generation of
yeah,
kids, you know.
yeah,
But yeah, I like a lot of like the chorus guitars from The Cure are like
yeah,
them and the Cocteau Twins are kind of the
yeah,
reason why I love using chorus on nearly everything.
yeah. That lovely
Um, but yeah, yeah, I can't say I'm a huge Cure fan. I'm still waiting for the right time to get into it.
Yeah, yeah. Bury your head into disintegration, mate, and you'll never
Yeah.
regret it. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah,
Um,
disintegration and pornography, I think, are the two main ones that I've listened to.
yeah.
Yeah,
I was just trying to think if Deftones have covered a Cure track.
they did. Yeah,
What one did they cover?
um, they did.
It weren't Pictures of You, was it?
No, it was. It's a really sick cover as well. As well. Um, No Ordinary Love.
No, that's
Is that the Cure?
Sade.
No, it's not. Yeah.
That's a fucking
Oh,
sick cover, that is, mate. Oh, that is amazing, that cover of No Ordinary Love.
If Only Tonight We Could Sleep.
Yeah.
Is that Cure?
And they done, what was the Depeche Mode one they done? They've done a Depeche Mode track. It weren't stripped. There was a Depeche Mode covers album called For the Masses, and I can't think what Deftones done on there, but it was fucking incredible.
Um, I'm trying to think now because I love I love the Depeche Mode album Ultra. That's one of my faves.
Mm,
They did a Cardigans cover which kind of blew my mind. Like they did that Do You Believe? I love that Cardigans
yeah,
record, Gran Turismo.
yeah.
And the cover's so cool as well. Like they just swapped out the synth part for guitars. It's just like now we're rocking,
Mm.
you know.
Yeah. Oh, mate.
Yeah.
This is going to merge into just us banging on about the Deftones for an hour. Um, okay, well let's pull it back with some shoegaze. And for the last track, I'm going to ask you to tell the listeners of this podcast a song that they may not know that you think they will enjoy.
What did I go with? Oh, we just skipped the shoegaze one, huh? I've been really since the pandemic, I guess maybe just before, I've been really into Chelsea Wolfe. I don't know if you know that artist, but she is, in my opinion, kind of like a once in a lifetime kind of artist. She can do everything. Like every single one of her albums is different. It's all super interesting, very dark, gloomy, moody music. And I think she's one of my favorite artists maybe of all time or at the moment. I saw her live like on Halloween, which was quite fitting. And yeah, she just put out a new album, I think beginning of this year. One of those tracks is called Tunnel Lights, and I think it's really um, very pretty. It all links back to Deftones as well. She's done a few songs with Chino, I
Oh
think.
wow!
This is going to blow your mind as well. One of the songs that they did together was under the name Sordard.
No way!
Yeah,
Love
it
that.
all it all comes together.
Love that.
But yeah, that's the song. I think she's an incredible artist. I love the way her guitar sounds. Her voice is like nothing I've ever heard before. And it all comes from a very genuine place as well. I feel like a few people have tried to imitate what she's doing, and it just like I don't know, it just doesn't really quite work. And she's just a massive music nerd, big fan of like, stuff like PJ Harvey and all of that kind of stuff, and then a lot of like the gothier side, like Sushi and the Banshees and shit.
Oh,
So
mate.
yeah, one of my favorite artists at the moment.
Mark, I'm aware uh, that the Cure wasn't your choice for the last track, and we skipped past discussing what that was going to be. I got bogged down banging on about the Cure, and I've realised that the track from your home county we haven't discussed. So let's do that now because
That's what sorry, we got so sidetracked. So what I read it as was Home Country, and I picked Slowdive. I think they're one of the best UK bands. And I feel like their music was so ahead of its time that it's only just being discovered properly now for how creative and how beautiful it was. And back then as well, all those sounds were made analog as well. They just didn't have they didn't have a lot of the digital stuff that we have today. So they had to like a lot of the stuff that you hear on those records is just um the result of a bunch of amazing musicians getting together and actually recording something that sounds incredible. So yeah, I love Machine Gun. I love the way the vocals sound on that. And sometimes you can't tell the difference between the vocal and the guitar line.
yeah, yeah.
Just the way that it blends together. You're just like, I don't know if I'm listening to the vocal right now. I love that. You almost kind of like sinking and getting lost in those deep kind of waves of sound. Um, and I think Rachel Goswell's just got such an angelic voice as well. And I think when that album came out, they were so young. I think they were like teenagers verging on being in their 20s.
Yeah.
Apparently, when they signed to who was they signed to?
Were they something heavenly?
No, it was the same label as
Oh, creation.
Creation, yeah. I don't think they were old enough to even drink
Yeah.
when they signed. So
They
they
played my venue on them early tours a few times. And
really.
yeah, yeah.
What venue do you run?
It's called the Pink Toothbrush. It's
Really? That's cool. That's a cool name.
the longest running alternative venue in the UK. And
Where is it?
it's in Essex in a place called Rayleigh. And yeah, steeped in a bit of history, that place. And yeah, there's a little documentary on YouTube about the venue, which yeah, which is an interesting watch.
Oh man, I will check that out. That sounds amazing. I'm looking at it right now. So sick. And it's how long has it been going for?
We celebrated our 40th anniversary literally in April. But before it was called the Pink Toothbrush, it was also called Crocs, and it was the only new romantic club outside of London. And our resident band was Depeche Mode,
What?
because we literally sort of 5 minutes from Basildon, and so Mode were like the in-house band pretty much. Uh, Culture Club, where George played his first show at my venue. Oh God, everyone. Blur, Ice T's played my club. Like, yeah, I've had some mad shit. Radiohead, and yeah, they've all come through over the years, and we're still banging out Deftones every Friday and Saturday night at the club nights to the next generation of thirsty alternative kids that want to yeah, find somewhere where they can go where they don't get shit, and that's what we do.
Awesome, man. I'm glad that these places still exist.
Yeah, they're few and far between now, unfortunately, and yeah, so
Our
hopefully,
spot in Blackpool that we kind of grew up going to was called the it's called the Tash, and that got closed down, but that was a really long running rock club since I think the 70s. It used to be called Your Father's Mustache, but it got
yeah, yeah,
changed to the Tash. I don't know if you've ever heard of it,
yeah, I have, yeah,
but yeah, and then Barney Rubble's upstairs. But yeah, I used to go there a little bit. That was kind of like you said, like it's just one of those places you can go and feel a little bit like kind of safe.
yeah,
Um, until it
absolutely,
started getting infiltrated by just people that wanted to start fights. They'd come down because they'd hear that it's cheap drinks and they'd start, causing trouble and stuff. And it was just like the end, the
yeah.
end of
We've
the
had
beginning of the end.
we've had them battles over the years, trust me, and
Yeah.
thankfully we're getting through it. But well, look, we put together a little Spotify playlist with all of the records that we've been speaking about today, and obviously we're going to be putting your music on there as well. And it's a bit weird that we've been chatting about solid tunes for the last hour, and we haven't actually mentioned your music. So
Oh yeah.
so what's happening? What's going on?
So yeah, we just put out our album Sundiver in September. That record has been in the works for the past 2 years. It's the second part of a two-part concept record that we've been wanting to do for ages. Just because, we're all fans of albums and stuff like the things that Pink Floyd did. We wanted to make a concept record that didn't feel too much like a concept record. Um, we wanted it to so that you could listen to both albums kind of independently of each other. So that was kind of like a little that was a bit of it was a bit tricky to try and put that to make that happen.
Sure.
So yeah, we're just touring that record now. We're super happy with the way it came out. I think it's the best version of Boston Manor. Feels very confident. It's really nice to be playing some heavier stuff and to feel a little bit more true to ourselves and just kind of do what we want to do. We just don't really pay too much attention about what's going on
Yeah.
around us. We're just really enjoying doing what the kind of music that we want to do. So yeah.
And if people want to find out more about the band and keep up the speed with releases and tours and such, like where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, just all of the social media stuff. Our Instagram is Boston Manor without the vowels. We're on Facebook. We're not on X anymore. We took our account down. Yeah, we're on YouTube. All of the ones. And you can find us on I think www.bostonmanorband.com. It's just kind of like where you can come and see where we're playing. You can buy some merch if you would like to help us out. That would be awesome. And yeah, watch some videos, listen to some music.
Wonderful. If it's cool with you, we'll tag you on it. Everything when this comes out as well. So if people aren't following you already, we'll make it nice and easy for them to go and do that. Um, Mike, it's been an absolute joy. Like,
Oh, pleasure's all
uh,
mine. Thank you so much for
it's
having me. It's been a great chat.
wonderful, mate. I'm glad you enjoyed it, mate. I'm going to press stop, but don't go anywhere.
Right.